What's up, everybody? It's your boy, rather grown man, Ralph Anthony Garcia, also known as R4. The legal, the loyal, the regal, the royal, Ronin Ralph, your master of ceremonies. And welcome to the 83rd edition of Ralph Reads Raw. This is the United Ronin Networks, and I would like to welcome you aboard as we continue from the classic Donald Goines Street Players. We're reading chapters 9 through 11. Big shout to the folks that make it happen. Abena Healer, Maria da Silva, Jane Knox SG CEO, Cynthia Chadwick Rucker, Alasia Ross, and Stanislava Cardona. Monster, Lost Rose, Keith Woods, Sees All the Time, K-Town, Trey Noel, Janie Pearson, Just Being Kiki, Tweety, Sherrill 5150, Tequila Green, CJ, Mr. Light, J Bobo, Goose Jack, Deswan Manuel, the fourth, Lady Rain 808, Pretty Ricky 22, Desmond Thomas, Dario Carrington, Marcus Valentine, Kyla Easler and the Easler family, BLE 007, Michael Woodford, Pat Master OST, Anthony Leach, Calm, Nana James, Tama, Mr. Fulltime, Brian Latham, Mr. T, Jalogic and Friends, and Demon Wolf 570. Alright, y'all. We're about to get it on. Let the reading commence. Chapter 9. In the opinion of the underworld, in the opinion of the underworld characters who were supposed to be in the know, Earl's young blonde-headed lawyer was believed to be the best in the city. At the moment, his sharp features were cast in the red hue of anger. He pushes his glasses higher on the bridge of his long Jewish nose and glared at the desk sergeant. He wasn't the only one who was angry. The desk sergeant's face looked like a ripe tomato as he listened to the young attorney's sharp words. He shouldn't have felt too bad because many an opposing attorney had gotten red around the ears after listening to Milton Mills's shrewd summation in court. The desk sergeant's anger didn't disturb Attorney Mills at all. Now, Sergeant, I don't have all day to wait for you to make up your mind to release my client. I've been trying to explain it to you, sir, that you have nothing else more important than the job of releasing my client. The lawyer removed a small form from his pocket. I have a writ here from Judge Rubenstein ordering that my client be released in my custody until reappear in his courtroom this afternoon. The desk sergeant raised his hands in the air. I understand. As I said earlier, we're going to release him, but the detectives want to talk to him first. The attorney laughed, but there was no humor in his voice. Now, Sergeant, I don't know how naive you think I am, but I'm well aware of the fight my client was supposed to have had with one of your detectives, so I think you would like to keep him around for more than just a few hours. But as I've stated, I don't have the time, and in fact, I've wasted more time than I can afford discussing this matter with you. Now, would you please trot on back there and get my client? Or do I have to inform the judge that you wouldn't acknowledge his writ? That you wouldn't acknowledge his writ? Pardon me for always repeating, but elements outside leak into the mic. Can't have it. That you wouldn't acknowledge his writ. The other police officers standing around attempted to... Cyrus gotta go away first. The other police officers standing around attempted to act as though they weren't listening, but their silence gave them away. Any other time, they would have been horseplaying with each other, but now they were all ears. All right, young man, I'll see what I can do, but you understand I'm just following orders myself. The sergeant stated as he picked up the desk phone and spoke quietly into it. A bellow came back over the receiver. And Mills could make out every word the turnkey said. What the hell? The turnkey screamed on the other end of the line. Them detectives are going to be mad as hell. They really want us to hold on to this punk, but if you say so, I'll bring the punk out. Do it then, damn it, and without so damn much mouth, the desk sergeant stated, his anger slowly rising. In the rear of the police station, the turnkey stopped in front of Earl's cell. He took his keys and rapped on the bars. Get your ass up, big shot. Looks like somebody took an interest in your ass. Earl stood up and stretched. The tiny cell was just that, tiny. It had a face bowl, but no toilet. Instead of a bunk or bed, there was an iron slab hanging from the wall. Earl had been using his shoes for a pillow. He reached down and hurriedly put them on. The quicker he got out of the funky place, the better he'd feel. Come on, the turnkey growled, even though he saw that Earl was hurrying. You keep poking around, boy, and I'll lock the fucking door back up. Earl glared at the turnkey. His calling Earl boy made him mad as hell. But he knew that if he let them know they got under his skin with such jive, they'd only run it in the ground. He took his time and tossed some water in his face so that he could get the sleep out of his eyes. He tried to pat his natural so that it wouldn't look too bad. Then followed the hostile guard. Through the doors until he was in front of his lawyer and the desk sergeant. The other policemen stared at him hotly. The word of his fight with the detective had spread, and now all of the uniform officers were trying to remember his face so that they could get him whenever they saw him in the streets. Earl could tell from the stairs that whenever one of them got a chance, he would end up getting a ticket or being brought down to the station on suspicion of something. They could hold him 72 hours on a suspicion charge if he didn't have the money to get a writ. If he didn't if he didn't have the money to get a writ. He followed his attorney out of the police station and over to the courtroom. It seemed as though they had just entered when Earl heard his name called. The judge was a small, shriveled old man. He examined Earl with a cold detachment that left Earl feeling weird. As the judge studied some papers in front of him, Earl glanced around and saw Connie in the back of the courtroom. He smiled to himself. He knew she had been there all day, more than likely trying to get him free. The judge spoke up, asking Earl how he was going to plead. His attorney put in his not guilty plea. The judge hesitated briefly, then set bond at $10,000. Earl's attorney almost went through the roof of the courtroom. The judge got mad. "From what these papers say," the judge said sternly, "I think the young man got off lightly. I don't have any pity for a man who fights with arresting officers, not to mention what he is charged with." The judge stared down at them. "Yes, I say this young man is getting off quite very lightly. Very lightly." Connie listened quietly from the back of the courtroom. When she heard the bond, she turned to the handsome, well-dressed Jewish bondsman sitting next to her. "Here, Sam, you might as well get your money now. I don't quite have that much." "That bastard! You know $10,000 is too fucking much." Sam grinned down at the tall, dark-complexioned girl next to him. He had been doing business with them for years, and he had a lot of respect for Connie. They had a close familiarity that only a long acquaintance could bring. I don't worry about the money with you or Earl, Connie, but I do believe it was extra high. I guess the judge is kind of hoping your old man can't make it." He laughed, then added, "I'd have sprung him if he didn't have a penny. So up the old bastard's ass." Both of them laughed as she slipped $500 into his hand. Sam put the money into his inside pocket without even counting it. Now that she knew Earl would be released, she started to relax. "Bullshit, Sam. I could just see you putting up 10 grand without us coming up with no money. Why, hell, Sam, why wouldn't you wouldn't do that for your poor old mother. For your poor old mother, let alone two poor blacks who have to make their money out in the streets." She took his arm as they started walking towards the door that led from the courtroom. "Yes," she said, "I'm afraid that that's the biggest damn lie you told all week. But I must admit, it was sweet of you to say it." "When you say things like that, Connie, you hurt me right there. You hurt me here. You hurt me right here," Sam said with mock dignity. Placing his hand over his heart for effect. A black couple walking past stared at them, and the man glared angrily at Connie. She laughed loudly as she realized what the man was probably thinking. They walked out of the building arm in arm, laughing and talking happily. Sam led her across the street to his office. People sitting around stared at them as they entered and went into one of the offices. Sam pointed towards a chair, and Connie sat down, crossing her long, well-shaped legs. The short dress she wore had not been bought for concealment. Sam was interrupted from straightening out the papers on his desk by Earl's arrival. The lawyer was with him. No wonder it took so damn long for me to get my bond, Earl said kiddingly. My old lady and the bondsman are hanging out over here in this crummy office playing games, while my lawyer knocks himself out trying to get me the highest bond in town. All three men laughed. Then Milton asked, "Is everything ready, Sam?" He didn't wait for an answer. "Jesus Christ, did you hear that son of a righteous bastard? $10,000 bond. Of all the crap." Earl's attorney was really angry about the bond. Earl listened as Mills continued. "Sam, we're going to have to get this case out of that bastard's courtroom. You know, because you can't tell what that old bastard might do. You can't tell what that old bastard might do." "You think you can swing it?" Earl asked quickly. He didn't look forward to going in front of the old man either, because he would be the one to serve time if something went wrong. "You're damn right I can handle it. If I can't get it changed, we'll just stall the case until that old bastard dies of old age." Everyone in the office laughed. "Well, come on, Sam. Let's get the paper signed. My client hasn't got all day," the attorney said. You really must pay him a lot of money, Earl," Connie said lightly. "Either that, or you owe him a nice piece of cash. I know from experience that that's the only thing that will make him worry about a client." The bondsman laughed loudly, and Earl winked at Connie. "You know him, honey," he said, and removed a lot. "You really know him, honey," he said, and removed a large sum of money from his pocket. But Sam here, he's just as bad." Earl peeled $500 from his bankroll, then turned to Sam. "Sam, are you hep to this guy here?" he said, and pointed over to his shoulder at his lawyer. "I mean, really hip to him," he said, laying the 500 on top of Sam's desk. "Of course," Sam said and grinned. "Milton takes me to the golf course for lessons every weekend." The bondsman reached over and counted the money. "Well now, all we need is your little signature on the dotted line," he said, pushing some papers across his desk. Milton moved close at the sight of the money, and Earl removed more money from his pocket. "Here," Earl said, and held the money out towards his lawyer. "It ain't but 300 in that roll, but it should give you peace of mind until I get you some more downtown." The attorney counted the money greedily. "Don't forget, Earl, that leaves a balance of $1,500 now. The attorney said as the couple stood up and made ready to leave. Earl didn't bother to answer. He steered Connie through the door. They took a cab, and Earl remained silent until after the cab had dropped them off and they had entered his penthouse. He shut the door and leaned against it. "Where the hell did you get $500 at, Connie? Where the hell did you get $500 at, Connie?" "That's the money me and Vicky made last night, Daddy. I still got over $100 left." Connie reached down in her bra and removed the rest of the money. She counted the money before handing it over to Earl. He jammed the money into his pocket and walked back into the bedroom. There's close to $150, Earl. There's close to $150 there, Earl, she called out gaily. There's close to $150 there, Earl, she called out gaily. From past experience, he knew she wanted to be loved for such a good night's work. His mind was on something else, though. He ignored her and stripped down to his shorts. He ignored her and stripped down to his shorts. He grabbed a towel from the dresser and snatched up his bathrobe. In minutes, Connie could hear the sound of the shower running. "Oh well," she murmured. She "Oh well," she murmured. She picked up his discarded clothing and removed everything from the pockets, placing his belongings on top of the dresser. She hung his clothes up neatly and put shoe trees into the shoes he had taken off. She then placed them in a rack in the closet. When he emerged from the shower, water dripped slightly from his shoulders as he glanced around. He had known everything would be put away neatly, and when Connie came over and took the towel from his hand, he had known she would do that too. He turned slightly so that she could wipe the water from his back. She kissed him lightly, and he twisted around laughing. "You're supposed to be drying my back, honey, not washing it." He slipped his arm around her waist. Her eyes began to glisten. She had hoped now that this would be one of those days when Earl didn't send her right back home. She wet her lips teasingly. "We're going to have a party, Daddy?" she asked. Her voice became husky. He didn't bother to answer. He just stretched out on the bed. Connie hit a button at the front of the bed, and music flooded the room from all four walls. She moved gracefully with the sound, removing her clothes. Earl lay on the bed and smoked a reefer as he watched her take off each garment to the beat of the music. She approached the bed from the foot, and sensation exploded in his limbs as she worked her way up his body. Well, that was quite the tease. Let me take a second, take a breather. Chapter 10. Okay. I'm going to read 11 too, so here we go. All right. All right. No problems. No problems at all. All right. It's a little much, but I don't care. I'm gonna knock it out. Let me see what up to the folks here. Hey, my favorite entertainer, the best to do it. Boom! 808's in the house. In the house. Thank you for being here, honey. I hope the lighting too bright. All right. That's cool. Let's do this. Chapter 10. Charles watched Earl pace up and down the living room. "I don't know what you're so worried about," Charles said, opening the subject that both men had ignored. "He done hired the best goddamn lawyer money can buy. So if it's any win for you in the deal, he should be able to do it." "I'll be the first to admit, Charles, these whiteys have got me scared," Earl said. "Ain't no reason for me to fool myself, baby boy. When these honkies get a nigga downtown in their courtroom, he ain't got no way of knowing how he's gonna come out, lawyer or not." Charles snorted. "Just relax, baby. You got it on your mind. That's your problem." It's not just what that's. It's not just that what's bothering me, Earl answered at a moment's thought. It's Faye's funky ass that I'm thinking about. It's been 2 weeks. It's been 2 weeks now, and they ain't released her yet. Shit, Charles answered sharply. You ought to know damn well they're going to keep her locked up for a witness until they bring you to trial. Charles frowned, then added, that's damn near standard procedure whenever there's a pandering case. Earl slumped down on the couch. You sure that shit, huh? He waited for Charles to reply, then added, they didn't do that to Baby Ray's woman. They let her out, and Baby Ray tightened the bitch up before they went back to court, so that they had to toss the case out the fucking window. That was at a different time. This is an election year, and they'll do everything they can, Charles said. Besides, they got that damn bitch on the city council now, and she's some kind of nut when it comes to whores. That bitch is just nutty when it comes to street whores, Earl managed to say. I ain't heard her doing nothing about the Macs behind the whores, just the bitches in the streets, that's all. Both men stared at each other in silence for a moment. I believe it goes a little deeper than that. She might not raise too much fuss about them white whores working, because when she's downtown at night, she can't tell that them white bitches riding by in them cabs is whores on their way to another hotel. But she can tell them black bitches working on them street corners downtown is whores. Cause the bitches will try and stop a car no matter who's looking if it ain't no policeman, Charles said. That ain't got no damn thing to do with me and Faye. Don't fool yourself, Earl. That's just what this shit is about. Them people ain't crazy. They know some nigga is behind all them bitches out there in the streets. Why, they keep that fool-ass bitch of yours locked up for 5 years if it will help them to get your kind of nigga off the street. That's why I don't look for them to release her. They know if you get your hands on that bitch, by the time your court day comes up, you'll have that bitch in Georgia or somewhere. Earl nodded. You're right about that. If the bitch should have a change of heart, their case is thrown out the door. If you couldn't make the bitch change her mind, you could always pay somebody to kill the funky bitch, he said. Earl knew the right people to pay for such a job. He had been thinking constantly on the subject, and now he put his thoughts into words. You know what they do with men witnesses, don't you? Yeah, Charles answered without thinking. They generally make trustees out of them if they want to work. That way, they don't have to stay locked up, and they have the run of the place. Earl was thoughtful for a minute. Most all of the trustees I've ever run into were either selling food they stole out of the kitchen or selling cigarettes. Earl popped his fingers, then asked, You think that's what they done with her, Charles? He answered his own question. Lock her up as a material witness, then made a trustee out of her. That's probably it, Earl. They pay her so much a day and put it in her account for her until she gets out. Earl's temper flared. The bitch is gonna need more than money. This thing between me and the bitch ain't gonna be finished after no trial. I'm gonna do something to this bitch if it ain't nothing but bust her fucking legs. Charles spoke gravely. By the time you get this mess straightened out, you ain't hardly going to want any trouble out of that bitch, Earl. Earl laughed before replying, but his thoughts were completely different from the words he spoke. You may be right about that, Charles, but I wish now that I never met the crazy bitch. The telephone interrupted them. Earl picked up the receiver. Hold on, baby, and talk slower. That's... Hold on, baby, and talk slower. That's better, Doris. Now I can understand what you're saying. Her words came to him more clearly. I'm in jail, Earl. They popped me this morning. Doris glanced at the nearest matron and then lowered her voice. Early this morning, Earl, two white bastards came to the door. I started not to let them in, but they were dressed like hillbillies, and they acted like they had been there before. God damn it, Earl roared. Didn't I tell you not to let anybody in unless they call first? They asked for Faye, Earl, so I figured they had been there before. Anyway, they came in, and I sold them some whiskey. Next, they tried to get me to call in another girl, but I put an end to that. I figured I wouldn't need any help turning two damn tricks. So I set the price at $50 apiece if they wanted to see me. She laughed lightly. That was the magic word, baby. Out popped their badges, and here I am, uptight. Earl laughed gaily. Wonderful, he said. Maybe my luck is beginning to change for the better. Doris removed the receiver from her ear and stared at it. I don't know what you mean by that, Earl, 'cause I can't see anything amusing about my being in here. Hold the line a minute, Doris, he said. He walked into the bedroom and closed the door, then picked up the extension phone. Listen, baby, just listen. You're going into court first thing in the morning, and you ain't got no problem, 'cause my lawyer will be there with you on the case, so you know it won't be nothing but a fine. Doris agreed. I know it ain't nothing big, honey, she said. Earl lit a cigarette and said between puffs, After you get your fine tomorrow, Doris, I'm going to wait until the next day. Before I pay it and get you released. What? Doris asked sharply, causing the matron to stare at her quickly. Just listen, Earl interrupted sharply. I think Faye's locked up somewhere on that floor. They put all you women at. So this is what I want you to do. Make contact with the crazy bitch and promise her $2,000, Doris. If she drops the charges on my case. Tell her she ain't got nothing to worry about. Ain't nobody going to harm her for the trouble she done caused me. Just tell her, baby, that if she don't drop the charges, she might as well make her mind up where to stay at. Make her mind up to stay where she's at until this time next year, 'cause my lawyer gonna have the fucking case postponed until hell freezes over. Before Doris could answer, the matron spoke up harshly. I done told you twice. I done told you once, girl, that your time is up. So how about hanging up the phone like a nice girl? Okay, miss. Earl, I have to go now. The turnkey is raising hell about me staying on the phone too long. But I understand what you want, so don't worry. If I got the chance, I'll take care of everything. You know I still love. The phone went dead in Earl's ear. The matron had cut the line. Doris's temper flared at the matron's action. She dropped the receiver down hard on the woman's hand. Ouch! The big, heavy-set woman screamed, and the anger leapt into her eyes, and for a brief moment she started to strike Doris. She managed to control her anger. Okay, dearie, she said slowly. Looks like we're going to have a little problem with you. But I promise you, we can handle anything you put down. The matron had been working in the women's prison ward for 5 years, and she had dealt with some of the meanest women in the city. To her, Doris had the look about her of a dangerous woman. She stepped back and added. She stepped back and nodded. That way, dearie. Without hesitation, Doris started walking in the direction the matron's finger pointed. She half-heartedly listened to the woman's voice behind her as they walked. You know, dearie, you can make it easy or hard on yourself. That's up to you. But the next time you fuck up and slam a receiver down on my hand, we're going to find out how tough you really are. Yeah, dearie, Doris replied, using the term the matron used all the time. The woman guard, known by all the female prisoners as the Beast, put her hands on her hips when Doris stopped in front of her cell. Oh no, dearie, not yet. First, you take that mop, and then you find you a bucket and see how well you can mop up this corridor. Shit, Doris snorted, then wrinkled up her nose and stared thoughtfully at the large, muscular matron. It was better to be doing something than to be locked up in her tiny cell, she reasoned. Before the matron changed her mind, she grabbed up the mop and found a bucket in an empty cell. She filled the bucket with water while in the cell, then carried it out into the corridor. The matron watched her closely as she began to mop up the long corridor, then turned around and found her soft chair at the front of the ward. All she had to do was lean over the desk. All she had to do was lean over the desk to see whatever Doris was doing. All of the cells containing prisoners were locked. My apologies, folks. I'm waiting for that noise to finish. Okay. All the cells containing prisoners were locked. The open cells were all empty. Either the women who lived in the open cells were preoccupied with simple jobs like the one Doris was doing, or to have moved in yet, or no one had moved in yet. Some of the women were out on hospital call or gone to see the prison dentist. In the very last cell, Faye lay propped up on her elbow, glancing through an old magazine. Well, I'll be damned. Look what the fuzz drug out of the. Look what the fuzz drug in out of the rain. Miss Fine herself. Doris stared into the cell. Her eyes became near slits. She managed to control her temper before she spoke. Well. If it ain't our #1 informer for our not-too-famous police department. How does it feel to be locked up for nothing, honey? Huh? Faye shrugged her shoulders. Her hair was tangled, and she seemed listless. You were there, Doris. You saw what that nigger did. He didn't have to kick me. What did you think I was going to do? Accept it? Doris leaned her mop against the cell door. Listen, sweetie, maybe he was wrong in kicking you, but you're not hurt now. Do you think I would want to lay down here in this funky jail for damn near a year just to put a nigger man in jail? If he had kicked you down the stairs or something, Faye, maybe breaking your arm or something. If he had kicked you down the stairs or something, Faye, maybe breaking your arm or something like that, I might could understand this shit. But just an ass kicking? Any good whore can stand one every now and then. Besides, it might teach you something. Ain't that a bitch? Faye said as she got up off her bunk. She walked to the front of the cell and gripped the bars tightly. If you can't understand it, Doris, that's too damn bad. I don't care if I have to stay locked up for 2 years, let alone 1. I'm going to put Earl's black ass right where he belongs. Both women glared at each other. Doris tried to make her voice stay calm. You're mistaken, Faye. A whore ain't never got to bust her man for pandering. That's just helping the white man out. Why, it's too easy for you to choose another man without getting mud all over your name the way you're getting it on yours, bitch. Both women fell silent for a minute. Both women fell silent for a minute. Then Doris continued. What you need, whore, what you need, whore, is a man carrying a lunch pail filled with dry sandwiches to some little job every day. 'Cause you ain't qualified, bitch, to have no motherfucking pimp. A nigga sporting diamond rings, wearing silk suits, and driving a caddy is your way, is, damn it, these sirens. 1 second. Shit leaks into the microphone and it's bad for business. What you need, whore, is a man carrying a lunch pail filled with dry sandwiches to some little job every day. 'Cause you ain't qualified, bitch, to have no motherfucking pimp. A nigger sporting diamond rings, wearing silk suits, and driving a caddy is way out of your league, you sorry ass bitch. Faye turned her back on Doris and walked to the back of the cell. You can say whatever you want to say, Doris, but it ain't gonna keep so-called Earl the Pearl's black ass out of the joint. You can bet on that. Doris picked up her mop and said softly, if you forget about those charges, Faye, as soon as you get out, all you have to do is stop at Earl's lawyer's office and he'll hand you $2,000 so that you can go anywhere your heart desires. Fuck that shit! I don't want to go nowhere but to court and see them bury Earl's funky ass behind some of these same kind of bars. And you can tell them for me. I'll wait with exquisite patience until that day. The matron put down the book she had been reading and glanced over her desk just in time to see Doris dragging the mop in front of Faye's cell. God damn it, girl! Is that all you've mopped in all this time? She asked loudly. Doris glanced down the corridor. Doris glanced down the corridor at the matron, but didn't bother to answer. Her mind was too busy on other matters. She moved with the mop as if she were a robot until her actions satisfied the guard. Faye's sarcastic laughter rang down the long hall. And after the sound had died, Doris could still hear it ringing shrilly in her ears. The night passed slowly for Doris. She tossed and turned on her narrow cot all night. On 2 occasions, the night matron found her standing and holding onto the bars. She was sitting on a bunk smoking when daybreak began to peep through the prison cells from the tiny windows overhead. She was wide awake when they called her name to go over to the hospital for a medical examination. This was standard procedure for all prostitutes incarcerated. Whenever they were picked up, the city gave them a checkup in their battle to keep down VD. If a girl was found to have a disease, the court would automatically give the woman 6 months. The girls were led handcuffed to the hospital, where they waited in line nervously for the doctor to give them their clearance. Judy Blender, a nurse called. A slim, dark-complexioned Negro girl stood up and waited for the matron to relieve her from the handcuffs. She then followed the nurse into the doctor's small treatment room. The remaining 6 girls glanced at each other nervously. They knew what it meant when the nurse called you into the treatment room. You had to go and get a shot. Then the nurse marked your chart. You had to go and get a shot. Then the nurse marked your card in big red letters, showing the world that you had a dose or something worse. When Judy came out of the treatment room, it seemed as if Doris heard them calling her name from a far distance. It couldn't be, she thought wildly, but sure enough, it was. As she followed the nurse, she cursed herself inwardly. She knew what had happened and when. She had thought the trick was having a premature discharge from too much handling. She had been sure of it because she had had to play with a John to make him want to spend any money. He had been waiting for his friend, but she had insisted that he do something after his friend finished. But she had insisted that he do something after his friend finished. She remembered how red the trick had gotten the face when the cum had come out of the head of his dick, but she still hadn't paid any heed. Greediness, that had been her reward. But she had wanted so bad to surprise Earl with as much money as possible. Well, one thing she thought, she hadn't given the dose to Earl. That much was sure. She hadn't slept with the man yet, and from the way it seemed, it would be quite a while before she got the chance to lay up with him in the future. God damn it. God damn it, she cursed inwardly. She didn't fear the 6 months, but she had wanted some of that dick so bad. And now it would seem like years. It would seem like years before she got a chance to lay up with that sweet brown meat. Pause. After they left the hospital, the matron took them to have breakfast. The rest of the women sat as far away from the two diseased women as possible. They acted as if something could rub off on them. Even the matron acted differently towards them. When they finished eating, she led them straight to court. There was a large bullpen right off the courtroom, and the matron locked all of the inmates inside of this large, empty cell. Inside of the bullpen, out of the sight of the people who happened to be passing by, there was a sewer in the floor. In the far corner of the cell. This was for the girls' use, if they should happen to want to use the toilet before court began. From it arose a strong odor, so most of the girls tried to keep their distance from it. Most of the girls talked with assurance of their coming court appearance. Shit, I ain't even worried. I know my dad is gonna get me out. If money can get you, I'll sure be out of here. The talk continued, but Doris refused to be drawn into it. One girl ventured to say, Doris, your old man sure is in bad luck this month, ain't he? Here you are about to begin a 6-month bit, and his other girl dropping the pandering charge on him. Shit. Shit, he ain't long for the streets with that kind of luck. Don't none of you bitches worry about Earl, honey. You can bet he will take care of himself, she replied. I know damn well that judge is gonna give me 6 months, Juddy stated to no one in particular. She tried to start up a conversation with Doris, but again, Doris remained out of it. Her thoughts were on Earl and nothing else. It seemed as if a fog was surrounding her mind. She felt as if the world was against her. After finally finding a man she could really love, something like this had to happen. She wasn't thinking about her problem, not in the least. What worried her was the possibility of Earl getting sent away to prison. If that happened, she felt as if she would just die. It was too much for her to endure. She knew if that happened, she'd track Faye's ass down and strump the shit out of her. Suddenly, she heard her name being called. She glanced up at the matron in surprise. Come on, dearie, the beast said, sneering. The judge won't wait forever, not even for a clapped-up whore. Harsh laughter followed her statement. She took Doris by the arm and led the way. They walked out into a crowded courtroom. It was as if they had entered another world. The judge was handling another case as they came out, and the matron sat Doris down in an open pew. It reminded her of the hard benches they used to kneel down on. In the Catholic church she attended when she was a girl. Her lawyer, Milton, weaved his way through the courtroom. He stopped beside Doris. And smiled down at her. I've talked to Earl, dear, and he wants you to plead guilty. Is that your plea? Doris seemed to brighten at the mention of Earl's name. You know it's whatever Earl wants, darling. You know it's whatever Earl wants, darling. You know that. She smiled up at Milton, then added, you know, I always do what my daddy wants me to do. Milton grinned kindly. He was not surprised at the simplicity of the young woman. It was a rare occasion when he came in contact with one that wasn't completely obedient to her man. Sometimes he wished that he could demand and get the same respect from his wife that the pimps demanded from their women. Before the judge called her up, she told Milton about the dirty smear test she had had that morning. Nothing to worry about, he had replied. When the judge called her name, she followed Milton up to the bench. After he explained to the judge that she was going straight to her personal doctor, he had let her off with a $400 fine. After that, she was quickly returned to the bullpen. What's going on out there today? One of the girls asked seriously. Ain't the judge passing out no fines? The group of women fell silent as they waited for Doris to answer. If there were no fines, only flat time, then all of them would be facing house time, and none of them wanted that. Each of them began to remember the last time they had been brought downtown. A narrow-chested woman stated loudly, if he's passing out time, I'm finished, 'cause I was busted last week and just got a fine. Doris spoke up finally. He gave me a $400 fine, and it wouldn't have been that high if I hadn't had that dirty test this morning. That's right, one of the girls said. You had to have a shot this morning. Girl, you lucky as hell. They usually give you 6 months for having a dirty smear. Shit, you're sure enough lucky. $400 ain't bad at all. The tension was broken, and the girls began to talk and joke loudly. I'm going to go home and take me a bath as soon as I get cut loose, one girl blurted out happily. A young girl, not over 17, with heavy makeup, spoke up loudly. Hey, Doris, if that's the case, then what the hell are you doing back here? Don't tell me Earl the Pearl can't raise your fine money. Some of the girls looked up in surprise. They hadn't thought about that. 400 was a large amount, but she didn't have a chili bowl pimp. She had one of the big players. But facts were facts, and only the girls who couldn't pay their fines were returned to the bullpen. Doris ignored the question and sat down. The young girl continued. Honey, if you can't raise that much money, my old man might get you out. He wants a wife-in-law from me bad enough. The other girls anticipated trouble, but Doris remained calm. Honey, I appreciate your offer. Honey, I appreciate your offer, but I don't need it. My man is well aware of what's happening, and so am I. So thanks anyway, okay? After that, the women left her alone. In about 2 hours, there were only 2 women left in the bullpen, Doris and Judy. Judy received 6 months. It's a goddamn shame, Judy said for the 5th time. If that ignorant bastard I had for a man had got me a fucking lawyer like yours did, I'd have gotten a fine instead of all this fucking time. A young matron opened the door and led them to the elevator, where 2 more matrons waited to take them across the street to their cells. When they got there, the heavy-set matron who had put Doris to work the day before was on the desk. She took their files and read them quickly, then removed the ring of keys from the desk drawer. You, she stated, pointed to Judy. Don't walk too near me. She got up from behind the desk, wrinkling her nose. You think I want some of that filth rubbing off on me? She added harshly. She took the keys and opened the cell door, pushing the door wide open and stepping back. I guess you know I'll be glad to see your fast ass on the bus tomorrow heading for the State Farm. Judy switched into her cell. I don't give a damn how happy you'll be. You can die in your goddamn sleep tonight for all I care. You can die in your goddamn sleep tonight for all I care. Doris laughed. The matron quickly turned on her. You're just as filthy as she is. The very sight of either of you reminds me of something dirty. Before Doris could reply, the matron spoke up sharply. None of your smart mouth now. We didn't ask you to come down here. The older woman stared at Doris as if she had been personally offended. And don't think because you didn't pay your fine, you're going to have it made and just lay around here either. Come along, she said, leading her towards the kitchen. Faye lay on her bunk with her legs crossed high in the air. She tossed the book violently into the corner and then stood up and stretched. The black skirt she wore came up above the top of her rolled-up stockings. She stared into the mirror the police had provided her with and straightened out her blonde wig. Without really meaning to, she stared around the bleak cell. Her thoughts were cold and bitter. I'm going to have to get out of here, she thought for the 1,000th time. After sleeping, she regretted having spoken so sharply to Doris. The $2,000 would have made up for a lot of things. The sound of the coffee wagon arriving caused Faye to react automatically. She turned, picked up her drinking cup, and stepped to the front of the cell. The fleeting thought of contacting the detectives and changing her story flashed vividly across her mind. If she did that, she reasoned, they just might release her later that evening. Out of the corner of her eye, she saw Doris step towards her, carrying a pitcher of steaming coffee. She smiled at the approaching woman. I better tell her I changed my mind, she thought. Without missing a step, Doris tossed the hot pitcher. The scalding coffee streamed towards Faye, enveloping her. A scream started in Faye's throat and got stuck there. But as the scalding liquid splashed against her, a scream burst from deep inside her, and she continued to scream as the hot liquid splashed into her face and saturated her clothing, blistering her from head to foot. Damn. Let me pause for the cause to say what up. Let's get it on. You the truth, says Waylon Jubbo. Okay. I hope I got that right. No disrespect at all if I didn't. Thank you, Wayland. Milagro Man, I listened to your reading of Dope Fiend like 5 years ago. A few times, actually. Oh, wow, Milagro Man, that's what's up. That's day one status right there, pa. Milagro Man says, I was in a good place in life, safe, not immersed in hedonism and sin, and thought, wow, I could never be like this again. Facts. That's respect right there. Totally feel you right there. Boy, I was wrong. Goins reminds a man, of what humanity is and capable of. Of what humanity is capable of. Let me read that again, Milagro Man. Boy, was I wrong. Goins reminds a man of what humanity is capable of. It's ugly, but it's real. Anyone who doesn't think mankind possesses a falling nature hasn't read Goins. Milagro Man continues, I'm a better Christian thanks to Goins. He reminds me that we are all capable of anything if put in a certain situation. Milagro Man then says, thanks for introducing me, man. I think your reading of Dope Fiend should be sold in bookstores. Goins lives through you. Goins lives on through you. Milagro Man, that means the world to me. Being that he's my favorite author, that means a lot to me spiritually, emotionally, mentally, psychologically, and internally. Thank you, brother. Much love to you. Much, much love to you. Milagro Man. Lady Rain 808 says, there are many and urban authors being brought to life, introduced, and reintroduced through you, King. Thank you, Boom. I appreciate that. Now, Boom, Milagro Man, and everybody else up in the house like this, taking the time in their busy life to check this out, you are appreciated. Yolanda Thomas, sensational experience, says she. Thank you. And a big shout from you, and a big shout from me to you from New York. Peace, y'all. Let's get back to the story. 11th chapter before I close it all down. Let's go. Chapter 11. Earl drove expertly through the traffic until he reached 12th Street. Until he reached 12th Street. The top was down on his convertible, and he waved gaily at two women working out of a gangway. One of the women yelled out to him, "Why don't you park and do some business, honey?" Earl laughed as he parked the car, and the women joined in the laughter with him. He got out and walked into the Gilbert Hotel, a combination bar and hotel. He took a mental note of Billy's and Carl's Cadillacs sitting at the curb. He stopped at the desk where an elderly Negro woman sat. "I think Vicky is inside the bar," she informed him. Thank you, Mrs. Jones, Earl replied to the woman. Earl replied to the woman. He opened the door off the lobby and entered the lounge, stopping inside the door to allow his eyes to get accustomed to the dark room. There was a horseshoe-shaped bar inside the club. The barmaids worked with a small stage separating them. Bill and Carl were sitting with Vicky between them. Earl stopped right behind them. Vicky seemed to feel his presence. Because she turned and smiled. He was again taken aback by the beauty of her smile. It was like the coming of dawn in a starless night. It was uncanny, and it was inconceivable to him that he had allowed himself to fall in love. He couldn't believe it. Don't you think you're keeping bad company, honey? He said lightly in her ear as he took her arm and raised her from the stool. He added, these fellows ain't spending a penny, baby. As she stood up, she lowered her eyes. The dazzling smile disappeared. I was just sitting down here having a drink by myself, Daddy, when they came in and sat down beside me. Billy spoke up. Don't worry about a thing, Vicky. If that's all he wants, I'll spend some money with you, he said seriously. Bullshit, Earl said. His money don't go, baby. He pulled her to him tightly and kissed her on the neck. He pulled her to him tightly and kissed her on the neck. From now on, honey, when these snakes come down on you like that, you just go back upstairs and wait for me there, 'cause they ain't nothing but dogs, okay? He didn't wait for an answer. He patted her on her rear and started her towards the stairway. And started her towards the stairway. Billy watched the attractive young girl walk off with a firm step. That's right, Earl. You watch that one, 'cause I'd sure spend some money with her and try to steal her from you. Don't you think you treated us kind of cold in front of her? Carl said. You damn near gave the impression that you don't trust your ladies around your real friends. Earl grinned, amused. He pushed a Coke Vicky had been drinking towards the barmaid, who stood holding the bottle of champagne. He nodded, giving her the go-ahead with her selection, and she set the bottle down on the bar and opened it quietly. Earl glanced from Carl to Billy, who was still watching Vicky as she disappeared through the swinging doors. Should I trust you guys? He asked. All three men burst out laughing at the same time. We ain't got no conspiracy going to steal your girl, Earl, Billy managed to say between bursts of laughter. But I would spend some money with her, and that's the God's truth. I know you would, Earl replied honestly. But to be honest with you, Billy, I don't want teeth marks all over that fine stuff. Earl's remark caused Carl to fall all over the bar laughing. The barmaid, overhearing their remarks, blushed, and Billy and Earl fell into each other's arms, laughing at her embarrassment. Billy replied, leering at the barmaid. You shouldn't mind me getting a little gash in my mustache, he said loudly. Carl, turning up a glass of whiskey at the time, choked on his drink and spit whiskey all over the bar. The barmaid glanced around desperately. The other barmaid glanced over The other barmaid glanced over her and shrugged her shoulders. This was something that happened every day as far as she was concerned. She only wished that she only wished they had sat on her end of the bar because they always tipped good. As the drinks flowed, the slight anger Earl had felt when he entered the bar, the slight anger Earl had felt when he entered the bar disappeared. The ribbing continued. Carl turned on the attractive barmaid. Girl, why don't you hang that apron up and get you some big money? The barmaid was a slim bar The barmaid was a slim, brown-skinned girl in her late 20s. If you're talking about getting money the way I think you're talking about, I don't need it that bad, she answered, putting her hands on her hips. You must need it pretty bad. You out here pouring drinks every day, Carl stated coldly. The girl's eyes blazed. My husband rather likes for me to make it this way. Do you mind? She asked sharply. Carl raised up on his elbows and stared over the bar at her legs. Girl, he said, rolling his eyes, with all that going for you, I must say your husband is making a mistake. With a shrug of her shoulders, the barmaid walked off. She knew she didn't have the chance trying to compete with the men verbally. She stopped and spoke to Carl over her shoulder. Here comes my husband in the door now, so you could be the first to tell him he ought to make a whore out of me. Carl jumped and stared at the empty doorway. Earl burst out laughing. You damn near jumped off that bar stool, man. Your nerves must be damn near shot. Billy poked Earl in the ribs. That's the last thing Carl will want to see is an angry husband. I'll second that statement, Carl answered quickly. He was a man who loved humor, even when he was on the receiving end. His broad face spread wide with a grin. You guys know me. I'm a lover, not a heavyweight. The barmaid came back and removed Earl's empty champagne bottle from its bucket. There was a small amount left, so she poured it for herself. That's one of the reasons why I knee pimp for my man, she stated dryly. She raised a glass and drank the wine down. That's a word you shouldn't use so lightly, lady, Earl said as he watched her closely. So many of you working ladies use that word so loosely, man, without knowing what a real man is. So many of you working ladies use that word so loosely, man, without really knowing what a real man is. The barmaid laughed harshly. My idea of a good man, honey, is one who can hold down 2 jobs without missing a day. I figured that, Earl replied coolly. But what you really mean is you need a mule for a husband, not a man. Earl reached across the bar and grabbed her arm before she could walk away. Wait a second, honey. If a nigga lays his game on you right, you won't be worried about how many jobs he can hold down. In fact, you probably wouldn't let him go out the door and work. Her face worked up in a frown and she stared at Earl as if he had just climbed from under a rock. She managed to pri- she managed to pry his fingers from her arm. "That nigga ain't been born yet," she said as she walked off. "Fuck that bitch," Billy said loudly. "She must think her cock is made out of gold." Carl became serious. "I hear you've been having your problems, Earl. I was wondering how Doris came out of that shit downtown, man." Yeah, man. Yeah, man," Billy said. "I heard about that treacherous bitch Doris trying to scald Faye. Did she do a good job of it?" Earl replied slowly. "Yeah, she burnt the bitch up pretty bad. It must have been. Yeah, she burnt the bitch up pretty bad. It must have been 'cause I had to put up a $10,000 bond. 'Cause I had to put up a $10,000 bond to get that bitch out." "What did she burn the bitch with?" Billy asked curiously. "I heard she got scalded, but with what?" "Coffee," Earl said. "The crazy bitch tossed a pitcher of hot coffee in on top of Faye. I ain't see Faye yet, but I hear she's burnt bad in the face." "These crazy things the bitch is doing, it ain't from your personal guidance, is it?" Carl asked. "I'm sure you don't think I'm behind this shit, do you? If I was, I wouldn't have told the bitch to burn her. I'd have instructed her to kill the funky bitch. This way, I wouldn't have no more trouble out of her." Billy quickly agreed with him. "That's what you needed, Earl, for that fool-ass bitch to go and die on you." He thought for a moment, then added, "If it's one thing I hate, it's one of those police calling bitches. The whore needs to be killed. That's what the whore needs." "That bitch needs killing 1,000 times, if you ask me," Carl said. "With that little commotion started in my place, Earl, if I had the slightest idea the bitch was going to start big trouble like this, I'd went on and had something did to a funky ass. If you get any more problems like this, Earl, even a big bankroll will start to feel the pressure." "Begin to feel it?" Earl said sharply. "Listen, man, between my lawyer and bondsman, there went my bankroll. And that ain't no bullshit." He turned to Billy. "Did you bring my package, brother?" Without waiting for an answer, Earl removed his bankroll and peeled off $1,000. He placed the money on Billy's leg. Without hesitation, Carl followed suit. He handed the roll of money to Billy as Billy checked the mirror to see if anyone in the large barroom had witnessed the transaction. There was no indication that anyone had taken the slightest interest in what had happened and in what was happening between the men at the bar. Not even the barmaids had noticed it. Not even the barmaids had noticed anything. Billy caught the eye of a tiny brown-skinned woman. Billy caught the eye of a tiny brown-skinned woman sitting in a booth at the rear of the club. She came out of the booth slowly. Earl had never noticed the woman in the club. He had thought the booth was empty. "How is Doris doing, Earl?" the woman asked as she joined the men at the bar. She stood between Billy's legs and smiled at the men. "Oh, how you been doing, Sandra? Wait. Oh, how you been doing, Sandra? I didn't even recognize you, girl. Doris is getting along just fine," Earl said, answering the question. He saw her slip into Billy's pocket, then continued, "I got her out on bond yesterday, you know." "Well now, that is good news. Tell her I said to look for me. I'm going to stop by and see her one day this week. Sandra waved at Carl. Sandra waved at Carl. Hi there, big fella. You're not going to sit there and not even speak to me, are you, Carl? Before he could answer, she reached up and pulled Billy's head down so that she could whisper something in his ear. Bye now, she said to the men as she made her way from the bar. Her jacket pocket bulged as if she had a large roll of money stuck in it. Billy removed 2 small packages from his pocket. He slid one to Earl, then pushed the other one to Carl. Well now, he said quietly, I might as well let you guys carry your own weight. The football now belongs to you, and so does the worry. He tossed a $50 bill on top of the bar. I guess I can't afford to take care of that bar tab this time, brothers. Barmaid, he yelled. Get off your ass, girl, and earn your money. Take a $5 bill for yourself, honey, and use the rest of the money to keep the bar full of drinks. Carl grabbed his arm before he walked away. How many cuts can I put of the shit, man? He asked nervously. It's just like I told you, baby. You could cut the stuff up 4 times and still have a beautiful blow. Just don't use too much damn quinine in it. Billy said as he got up from the bar. You sure don't... It's just like I told you, baby. You could cut the stuff up 4 times and still have a beautiful blow. Just don't use too much damn quinine on the shit, Billy said as he got up from the bar. You sure don't know when whore money runs short and the pimps have gotten it. And the pimps have to go into other businesses to keep their heads above water, he said before leaving the bar. The 2 other men watched him walk away. Carl stood up and straightened his tie. Don't look like he wasted much time getting away, does it? He asked to no one in particular. Fuck it, Earl said, and felt the small package of dope resting in the palm of his hand. The dope made him restless, too. He knew why Billy had gotten away so quickly. Whenever you had dope on you, it was time to make a move. You didn't loiter with it, unless you were a damn fool. Every time I have to handle some of this shit, Carl said suddenly, I get nervous as hell. My mind plays some of the damnedest tricks on me. I start to believing the police are behind every door or waiting around the corner for me. Both men joked for a minute, but neither wasted any time. When Carl felt that Billy had had enough time to be away from the place, he made his move. Billy was the only one of them known by the police as a drug man. The others were believed to be nothing but pimps. Later, baby, he said and departed. Take care of yourself. Take care of yourself, Earl yelled. He hadn't had to wait, since he had an apartment on the 2nd floor, but he knew that Carl was trembling. So he had stayed to keep the big man company. Vicky opened the door instantly when he knocked. The hotel apartment had a Murphy bed, one that came out of the wall. Vicky had the bed down, but she had taken the time. But she had taken the time. Wait, 1 second. But she had taken the time to clean it up neatly. She had taken the time to make it up neatly, so Earl had an idea of what she had in mind. He had sat on the end of the bed and began to mix up his drugs. He kept his milk sugar and other things he used to fix up his he used to fix up his drugs in Vicky's apartment, since she didn't generally turn any tricks out there. Turn any tricks out of there. She watched him mix up the drugs with fear in her heart. She was not naive or inexperienced enough not to be aware of what he was doing or how much time he could get if he got busted for handling drugs. They would throw the book at him because they wanted him already. Because they wanted him already. "Oh, baby, Daddy, do you have to do this?" She pleaded. "I mean, can't we work something else out?" She walked over to the bed and climbed up behind him and placed her hands on his shoulder. But he quickly shook them off. For some reason, she couldn't keep her hands off him. Whenever he came around, she had an overwhelming desire to always put her hands somewhere on him. She had never felt this way about anyone in her brief life. "If you ever need something to do, woman, try folding up one of these packages as I finish with them." After about 20 minutes, they finished the packaging of the drugs. It had been a slow job and a dull one. Earl took his time and counted out each one of the packages of narcotics. "Damn it," he said without anger. I couldn't get but 55 quarters out of my investment. If everything goes right, I should make somewhere in the neighborhood of $2,500. That ain't too bad," he continued, as if he were talking to himself. If I get rid of it quick, it won't be no problem." He removed a $10 bill from his pocket. "Take this downstairs, Vicky, and rent another room in this joint for the night." Vicky took the money and hurried off on her errand. Earl waited impatiently for a return. He knew she would move as fast as possible, but it still seemed as if it took her hours when, in fact, she was gone only 10 minutes. She returned panting, as if she had run, which she had. She came to the door of the apartment and beckoned for Earl, and he followed her out into the hallway. He didn't give a damn about what the place looked like that she had rented, but it seemed to make her happy, so he followed. She opened the door slowly. Earl walked into the room and examined the place carefully. It would do, here or elsewhere. It didn't make any difference. "Vicky, I want you to stay in this room tonight. I'll be calling back to check on you." He raised his hand for silence. "Now dig, baby. What I want you to do is this. Each time I call back, I'll be sending someone over to pick up one of those packages of dope, so you'll know in advance who's coming and who to let in. Don't worry about me, Daddy. I know how to handle myself in these streets. Well, this ain't the streets, girl. So just listen. Each time I call, you're to go down the hall and pick up one package. I'll let you know over the phone if you'll need more than one at a time. Now, each time a customer comes, he or she will be spending $55 or more. I'll be out in the streets drumming up business, and if everything goes right, by daybreak, we'll have a pocket full of money." He reached out and pulled her to him, holding her tightly in his arms. I don't like this, baby, but it has to be done." He released her, but still held her hand, leading her out into the hallway and back to their other apartment. Once they got inside, he picked up the dope and searched for a hiding place. His fingers dug down into the dirt of a large flower pot. His fingers dug down into the dirt of a large flower pot. He scraped enough dirt out so that his package could fit inside the hole he had dug. Then he covered the drugs up carefully and replaced the flower pot on the windowsill. "What about those?" Vicky asked, pointing at the packs lying on the floor. Without answering, Earl picked up the drugs and tied them tightly in his handkerchief. Earl tossed the small bundle up in the air and caught it neatly as it came down. These are the ones you're going to start out selling, Vicky, baby." He reached out again and pulled the sepia-complexioned woman into his arms. "Damn," he thought, as he held her tight. "I can't keep my hands off her." He kissed her gently. "Now, don't you worry about nothing, honey," he said as he pushed her out to arm's length. I'm not worried about myself, Daddy. I just don't want nothing to happen to you here in this. I just don't want nothing to happen to you out there in the streets." It never entered her mind that, without her selling the drugs, the chances of something happening to him were very remote, while her danger of being arrested or robbed was great. She stood back on her heels and stared up into his dark eyes. "What you thinking about, Daddy? You sure look serious enough." He returned her stare without blinking and lied. "I was wondering if I should keep you out of the shit, Vicky, and handle it all myself." Before she could interrupt, he added, "I could do it without too much trouble, you know." Her reactions were just what he expected, but it still hurt him a little to realize that he had all this tender love and had to exploit it. Don't draw the line on me now, Daddy," she pleaded, and there was a note of desperation in it. "Okay, baby, okay. But remember one thing. Don't let nobody in that I haven't told you was coming over. Nobody. Do you understand that?" She nodded in agreement and laid her head on his chest. He lifted her head and planted a kiss gently on her lips. Her tongue flicked out, and he could feel burning fire inside his mouth. The passion in her kiss warmed his very soul. He moaned as she pressed against him tightly. He could feel her heavy thighs pressing against him. She moved her hips, and he could feel the heat from her body. The tight miniskirt slipped down as she stepped out of it. He didn't realize how she had gotten out of it. He didn't realize that it was his own fingers that slowly unsnapped the bra. Her firm young breasts sprang out, and he lowered his head and took one of the golden brown gifts into his mouth and rolled it on the tip of his tongue. He played with the nipple until it became hard. Then he ran his hands up between her legs and rubbed slowly until she moaned with inconceivable anguish. An unwholesome heat ran down his spine as she stuck her tongue in his ear. He fell back on the bed with her clasped tightly in his arms. Saliva ran from his mouth as he tried to pull her young head up from his stomach. He didn't want it that way. He wanted to penetrate her. He wanted to pound furiously into her belly. He rolled her over and straddled her wildly. His penis became enormous. He forced it between her legs. She screamed out in pain. This wasn't the kind of love he was used to. He wasn't using any of his vast experience. It was animal lust. He took her the way a stallion took a mare. He didn't give nature time to moisten her before he forced his way in. She screamed again, but his passion was so intense that it didn't make any difference. Her animal instincts came alive then, and she met him thrust for thrust, pain for pain. And soon it was scream for scream as she dug her nails in deeply and drew blood from his quivering back. It didn't last long, and soon they both lay on their backs, staring up at the ceiling. "Damn," he managed to say. "I ain't never carried on like that before, Vicky. I don't know, woman. You must have your mojo working, girl." She smiled, savoring the encounter. "It really was something else, honey. We ain't never did nothing like that before, and I ain't in no hurry to ever do it again." "I'll go along with that," he agreed quickly. He twisted her around in his arms and started to take her slowly and gently. They made love this time with care. She groaned and moaned softly. Her voice was a caressing murmur in his ear. When they reached their climax, they both came together. They both came together. There was no violence, only love. He held her tightly in his arms, feeling something he had never really felt before with a woman. "Vicky," he started to say that he loved her, but he couldn't get the words out. "Yes, baby," she answered quietly. "What you want, honey?" He took her arms from his neck and slowly got out of the bed. He walked over to a mirror and glanced at his back. "Damn," he swore as he stared at his scratch marks. "I ain't never been scratched up like that." He shook his head in wonder. This was something he never allowed any of his women to do. One of them started to scratch, he stopped making love to them. If she continued to scratch, she'd have to find her another love partner because he just wouldn't stand for it. He hated to be scratched up and didn't bite his tongue about it either. Either a woman did like bite Either a woman did like what he said, or she didn't have it. Or she didn't have him. That was that. Earl took a quick shower. When he came out, Vicky was sitting up in bed reading. "Listen, Vicky, I want you to pay attention now. Whoever comes up here will be spending at least $55 a piece for just one of these packs. Be sure, don't nobody see where you keep your bags hid." He slipped his coat on and walked to the door. "Get ready to be a very busy woman for the next 24 hours, he said, closing the door behind him. Chapter 12. Darkness was invading, the evening shrouding figures and shadows, and the streets were becoming less crowded as the elderly hurried to the shelter of their small rooms or, if more fortunate, their small homes. Areas where children had played happily now became darkly ominous spots that women walked around with hurried steps. Earl stopped his car in front of a large, run-down apartment building. He spoke politely to two elderly women. Sitting in folding chairs, enjoying the evening air. The building he entered didn't have an elevator, so he walked the 4 flights up. He knocked lightly on the door of an apartment. "Who the hell is it?" called a belligerent voice from inside. Earl quickly replied. "Earl who?" asked a voice, now closer to the door. Now closer to the door. And I peeped out at Earl from a hole in the door. From a hole in the door. Who you want to see, man? A new voice asked. I want to see Super Sport, Earl replied, not liking the changes he had to go through. There were shuffling noises behind the door before it finally opened. An old schoolmate stood in the door with a wide grin on his face. He pushed his hand out towards Earl. Come on in, man, come on in. What is this? He asked, smiling. At first, I couldn't believe it was really you, Earl. Not the big fellow down here in the ghetto, man. Earl stepped into the shooting gallery and stared up at Supersport as the big man closed the door and put the bolts in place. The big man hadn't changed much over the years, Earl thought, except that the football build, which had made him the idol of the girls in school, was now turning to fat. For a brief moment, Earl let his eyes drift around the apartment. It was something out of a horror show to the unaware. Junkies sat around the room with needles hanging from their arms. One young girl was bleeding from too many needle jabs that didn't hit pay dirt. She continued to try desperately to hit a main. A young boy sitting beside her and nodding lifted a piece of cotton from the floor that someone had been using to wipe blood with. He moved to the soiled cotton across her arm and tried to stop the blood from dropping onto her clothes. She snarled at him like a cat. God damn you, Judd. I had a hit, motherfucker, and you done went and blowed it. The boy stopped trying to wad the blood away. I didn't mean to hit your spike, bitch, but I care less than a fuck if you bleed to death. Just don't get no blood on the skirt. You ain't finished paying for it yet, he warned her, then dropped his chin back to his chest. There was a smell in the room that, for a minute, Earl couldn't make out. Then it came to him that it was the smell of blood. There was an unwholesomeness about the apartment, and he wished his business was completed. His imagination had not prepared him for this. Well, Earl, Super Sports said quietly, since you done had a good look around, and now you know how the other brothers and sisters live, tell me what brings you around my way. I know you ain't started using, have you? Perspiration broke out on Earl's forehead, and for a minute, he couldn't understand what Supersport was saying. He caught a grip on himself and said, No, man, it ain't nothing like that. What I came by for was to let you be the first to know that I have some bomb stuff, man. Some sure enough good jive. Supersport laughed loudly. You pimps kill me. You try and make everyone believe the whores would die if you didn't exist to accept their money. And then every damn one of you end up juggling with some dope bag. Yet, every time I see one of you in a bar or somewhere, you guys are always talking that crap about the only kind of money you'll accept is whore money. Supersport raised his voice at the end, and a few of the addicts sitting around overheard what he said and laughed. Earl made a move towards the door. Wait a minute, Supersport said. Where you going in such a rush, man? Earl stopped at the doorway and spoke so quietly that no one could overhear what he said. I told you, man. I had some smack. Now, If you want to get your kicks panning me, I'll come back later. After I take care of this business and let you go for your busters. Super Snort snorted. Super Sport snorted. If you gonna be a dope man, baby, be one. You got to tuck your sensitive feelings away, man, cause all you gonna be dealing with is dogs. Okay, man, I dig it, Earl replied. He wrote a number down. Here, man, when you get ready to make up again, how about you trying out my style? How about trying out my stuff? Hold your horses, baby, Super Sports said and grinned. Man, ain't you hip? I'm already ready to get when I'm always ready to get when some good smack is on the set, man. If you'll wait until I get through shooting this cooker full of stuff, man, I'll spend $800 with you. It ain't all the money in the world, but I spend that much twice a day, baby. Super Sport sat down and pulled up his sleeve, revealing needle tracks all over his arm from the use of drugs. I ain't got to lay soup. All you got to do is call that number, man. I got somebody there to take care of whatever you want. Super Sport stared at Earl. I know you have, man. I'll bet my last dollar you got one of your frail whores sitting in a room somewheres on top of all that dope. His harsh laughter followed Earl into the hallway. What you better get hip to, Earl, is that this is the dope game and not the pimp game, baby. You better put some protection on that girl you got selling that stuff before somebody goes through there and takes her head off. But no matter, man. Whatever happens, I'm going to give you a play. He grinned at Earl, then added, Why, who knows? I might even end up buying me some trim instead of some stuff. Earl was angry. He knew that Super Sport was just high, but it didn't help his conscience any by telling himself that. He stumbled going down the stairway and ended up leaving the building in the blind rage. For a second, he just sat in the car and stared straight ahead. He wished now that he had never bought the damn drugs, but he didn't really know that much about them. He started the motor up and rode around smoking some reefer until his mood changed. After that, he moved in and out of dope houses for the rest of the night. Sometimes he would call Vicky twice in less than 10 minutes about some business coming through. At one time in the night, he had stopped and picked up drugs and carried them himself, selling them as he went along until the morning dawn caught him just about. At one time in the night, he had stopped and picked up drugs and carried them himself, selling them as he went along until the morning dawn caught him just about out of stuff and with a pocket full of money. When he staggered out of the last dope house on the schedule, he had let out a sigh of relief. He felt humble after all the anguish and misery. After all the anguish and misery he had witnessed, he took his time and locked his car up slowly and carefully. As he went around the car, a police car drove slowly by, and the two officers stared at him suspiciously. Earl laughed after they had passed. I beat you that time! I beat you that time! He yelled loudly. I stuck my head in the devil's mouth that time and got away with it. He laughed to himself and staggered up to his apartment. Vicky met him at the You look mighty You look mighty sexy for a gal who has been up for the past 2 days, honey, he said as he took her into his arms and kissed her. She pretended to frown, but a smile burst from her. As she nodded towards the pile of money on the table. I think I'd rather sell the white poison, Earl, than go back to whoring, she added hurriedly. I ain't never made so much money in so quick a time. I mean, Earl, big money like we. Earl, big money like we got off that. Earl, big money like we got off that stuff. He stared at her silently before replying. I hadn't planned to handle any more than those first pieces of stuff, Vicky, but I listened to you and flipped my money again. And now we got twice as much as I needed, baby. We don't need no more parts of any dope, honey. We done got over the hump. He mentioned towards the money on the dresser. He motioned towards the money on the dresser. No, baby. We don't need to handle no more drugs. Vicky smiled happily as she opened the closet door. She rummaged around until she found what she was looking for. She wiggled out of her clothes and slipped through the see-through gown over her head. How do you like me in this? She asked as she turned towards him. Earl twisted around in his chair and had to catch his breath. The sheer black gown she wore seemed to be part of her body. With the wisdom of a woman, she had put on a red light, so the room held just the right shade of light for that moment. She drifted across the room towards him, and Earl held out his arms out to her. The thought crossed his mind that he was supposed to have called Connie up, but he knew it was too late. For that now. At that moment, Vicky seemed like the very creation of beauty, and she brought to his bedside a love that surpassed anything he had ever known before. They had been tired. They put records on and danced tightly in each other's arms, neither wanting to rush the morning that promised so much delight. As the music came to an end, they moved towards the bed together. Vicky put both her arms around his neck and pulled his head down towards her heaving breasts. Her breathing became heavy, and her breath became a scorching heat wave in his ear. You know, Daddy, she said huskily, passionately, I'll do whatever you want, and any way you want me to do it. If that's the case, baby, how about turning loose that damn hammerlock you got on my fucking neck? He replied quickly. I wouldn't want to do nothing or end up doing something I didn't have any plans on doing, he said as she released him. He planted a kiss on her stomach, and she caught her breath and tightened up her muscles. Now is the time I should really give you a push, she said emotionally. Now is the time I should really give you a push, she said emotionally. Their laughter rang out, and he climbed into her waiting arms and pulled her tightly into his embrace. All right then, that was freaking cool. Now, let me just stop this right here and call this what I need to call it. Street Players Volume 3. Save. And that'll be that. All right then. Thanks, Ralph, says Milagro, man. I meant everything I said, brother. God, someone put your channel in my feed at the perfect time. No reason for it to be in my feed either, just random. Providence, really. Much love. My girlfriend doesn't get why I love Goins. She's Coptic Orthodox. She thought it glorifies sin. I told her it's the exact opposite. It describes it and reminds you why you should keep away from it. Agreed. Agreed. We all like to think we are high and mighty and could never sink to the level of these characters, but it only takes one bad choice. One bad friend, one trauma, one temptation. Just my personal opinion, but we are all one step away from becoming these very characters. We need to be vigilant to stay on the right road, and I really think Goins knew that. Milagro, man, I thank you right back. He says, thanks, man, after saying all of that knowledge. I love it when knowledge be born here on this channel, especially. I appreciate you, Milagro, man, for that. Like, totally. Now, I would like to take this moment real quick since I got a couple minutes left before these trains start rolling in for the rush hour. Yo, let me share a couple of things, like a story. All right, let me just take it back. Let me just take it back to a time. Let me just reminisce about something, anything right now. All right, y'all, coming off the top of the head with something, you know, this is not something I planned on doing. I'm just going to freestyle this. I'm just imagining of my times of taking the Via. Those that like cabs out there, if you know, you know, huh? If you had enough money to delve, and if you lived in Manhattan, you knew all about Via, especially if you like taking cabs like Ubers and Lyfts and shit, right? Via was it. Via, at the time I was using it, asked for $63 a week. $63 a week as long as you maintain in Manhattan with 4 rides. 4 rides were fine. I mean, you know, $63 for one trip from Manhattan, the tip of Manhattan, all the way down to the Lower East Side. By itself, it's worth it. You know, they're going to charge you $50 for it. So $63 for the whole week for 4 rides. You know, for basically 2 trips, you know. But that was fine, you know. And that's for I mean, no bullshit. It was for each day. For each day, it was 4 rides or 2 trips for the week. $63. Who the fuck was being that? I sure wasn't. And then Via, if they wasn't sending those little box car looking, Lego looking Mercedes Benzes, I mean, that's what they were. They were Benzes, but they were just looking like these Roblox shits, you know, these black vehicles, these little black shoebox looking vehicles. If they weren't sending those, they would be sending SUVs of the highest grade. Denali's, Suburbans, Escalades. Bro, when one of those come, and I got to work somewhere downtown, bruh, tell me why every time I enter the vehicle, you know, and all of this bells and whistles, and we start to rolling, we say hi to each other, me and the cab driver, and we start to moving. I'm in the back of that Escalade, in the back of that Suburban, in the back of big ass SUV. And then I would look out into the streets, especially where it would reflect the vehicle as I ride past whatever buildings, whatever stores, what have you. And can't help but to have that one tune in my head. You know the tune from Coming to America, where King Jaffe Joffer shows up and they play that music? Every time I'm rolling through the streets in that Suburban, that's all I hear in the back of my head. You know what I'm saying? Like, feeling like royalty, straight up. I mean, here I am saving a bundle of cash, taking Via every week. I mean, after a while, you know, they started to get a little smart with it. I mean, picture this. Back in 2016, 2017, 2018, yeah, I was on that, man. I was on Via. And whenever you leave Manhattan and go into like Brooklyn or Queens, yeah, they're gonna hit you, but it ain't as hard, you know, because you already got your set price for the Manhattan rides, and that's $63. But if you take the Via to, let's say, Brooklyn, for instance, you're only gonna pay maybe $10 or something. You ain't gonna pay anything crazy. Facts. I'm telling you. It's like they didn't make enough money to stay up. You know? I mean, that's what I got from it. Cause suddenly Via just disappeared. Like, what the fuck? Try taking anything for $63 a week, let alone 10 rides for the week for that price. It ain't gonna happen. This is the value I had way back when and why I did it, you see. I miss those days. Taking Suburbans to clubs and, you know, taking these big black rides over to where I had to go pick up my money. You know, sometimes I'd work for companies that have you go all the way to El Casa de Carajo to pick up your fucking money. You work in Manhattan, you think you get paid in Manhattan. No, they insist on getting you to go wherever the fuck out of your way to pick up your money. That's one reason, just one of a myriad, a cornucopia, if you will, of reasons why I just won't bounce anymore. I've retired. I'm not going to be a security guard ever again. I'm not going to be a bouncer ever again. I remember 10 years ago, I would be like, I don't want to be a bouncer no more. I'm sick of this. I don't want it anymore. I'm sick of this shit. I'm out of this whore. Like, come on, bro. Like, it's gotten worse over the years. I'm going to tell you, when I first started doing this back in 1995, 30 years. I mean, I retired on my 27th year, but 30 years ago, come to 2025, it was different. I promise you it was different. There was no phones, all right? So you didn't get none of this shit going on, right? You didn't have people lighting up their damn flashlights on their phone, adding much more annoying light to already annoying light in the club. Bro, it would be annoying. Like, sometimes some of these DJs insist on using these lasers, and whenever I'm standing in a spot, working a position, working a post, and get one of those goddamn lasers shown in your eyes, bruh, not fucking cool at all. One time, I tried to wear shades to maybe, you know, prescribe myself something to prevent this from happening, only to get told, no, you can't wear that in here. I'm like, yo, I only wear this simply because of these wayward ass lasers. Can I please wear these tonight? It took for one of them damn things to beam inside one of their eyes. Boom! For them to actually agree with me. Okay, you can wear that then. Yeah, not cool. You ever had lasers pointed directly in your eye? Exactly. Then you know. Not cool. Not fun at all. But back in the days, there was a difference. You know, it wasn't all of this bottle service. It wasn't people cheering for or explosives going off or fireworks being held for a bottle to be introduced to your little VIP area. Jesus Christ, it wasn't even none of that in the early days. I'm telling you, it was none of that. Okay? I went to Studio 54. I hit Palladium. I hit Sound Factory and Roseland and BB King's. Huh? They wasn't doing all that in there. I mean, they started doing all of that later, like, you know, like 97, 98, and 99. That's when they really started doing that dumbass shit. I promise you. Stupid ass shit. I don't mean to be pocket watching, man, but these niggas insist on being seen. Look at me, I'm popping Henny. Shut the fuck up. I get on my damn nerves with that shit. You know, for real, bro. Like for real. Man. And then suddenly, you know, and then the music. The music, you know, it's worse now. And when you playing all that negative energy inside the club and you're playing that shit at ridiculously high volumes, these DJs don't know how to fucking mix down a product, man, at all, bro. I promise you they don't. I promise you they don't. They have the music way too loud, way too bassy. For what, bro? I get it. I used to DJ too. There's a certain power behind controlling such sound. But when you overdo it, bro, it screeches in my fucking ears like nails on a chalkboard. Why don't you people realize this? DJs had a pride about their sound, especially when you got a promotion backing you up. You have a certain standard behind that shit. Most DJs today, they're button pushing motherfuckers anyway, man. That's it. That's it. You're not jigging. You're not doing tricks with the turntables at all. You're pushing buttons. Shut the fuck up. I DJ too. Use DVs usually, and it forces not to cheat. I feel you, my brother. Because I'm talking to my people out here as I'm talking to you out there. You know what I mean? My man, Milagro Man. He's in the place to be, checking in with me. Yeah, man, I DJ too. I use DVs usually, and it forces not to cheat. Digital vinyl system. That's right. You got to jigger on those. And you got to jigger nicely on them. I miss the jigger sound in songs. It's like once you started getting less and less of that, you already knew what it was, man. Phasing out the DJ, you know. Ah, man. And to think, in my day, we used to show much respect to the DJ. Like, it would be DJ whoever the fuck and the Fantastic Six and shit, you know. You know what I mean? DJ Polo and MC Kool G Rap. Now it's Kool G Rap and Polo. You dig what I'm saying? It's like this reversal, this lack of respect for the DJ now. It's like, come on now. You know? When you lack respect in certain instances in this game, in this shit, you know? Like whatever happened to the beat juggling? Whatever happened to, you know, like mixing and gotta scratch and beat juggle, says Milagro Man. Beat juggling is really where the skills is at. And all the old school DJs did it without exception. Turntable is an instrument itself when you use it right. I totally agree. Yo, I seen some shit online that blew my mind. Dude was playing violin with the scratching and the beat. You know, like just jigging the fucking violin to a whole orchestra. The shit sounded sick. Look it up. Thank me later. Yo, word. Like, like the better technology improved, the worse the club or the nightlife has gotten. All right? That's where it is right now. That's where I'm at. That's my position on it. Did I wish these gadgets were available to us in our days in the 90s? Hell yes. But things come as they do, and there's a reason why they drop in the timeline that they do. So, better late than never, I guess. I miss the club. I miss the club scene. Like what made the club scene what it was in its day, in its heyday, in its Sound Factory days, in its Palladium days, inside the Limelight days, inside the Roxy days, Fever, Las Vegas, Mirage, Providence. I'm just naming names of clubs now. And the Red Parrot, the World. Remember that joint on Times Square when it was once the WWF New York and it became the World. And the Tunnel. Man, oh man, I miss when, you know, we used to actually have fun in these places and you know, and make the most out your night with having fun, dancing, listening to the DJ and his tricks. And meanwhile, Milagro Man says, "You still have tables?" I say, "Yes, actually, I have a pair of tables I would like to sell to whoever might want them." I go to DMCs. All right, for those that know, DMC is a DJ competition. I go to DMCs once a year, not as a contest, and seeing the top 8 in the world compete is insane. Turntablism is alive, but I would say about 90% don't use it as an instrument. I appreciate software because I can mix songs that aren't on vinyl. What decks you got? I said, well, I have two old Technique 1200 MK2s, I think. And they had been, I mean, they're old. They're about 40 years old, dead ass. And they've been pimped over back in the 2010s, you know, cleaned out, rewired, and all of that. Thanks to my men's and them, J Tech NYC. Look him up on Instagram and look up his work. Man, he pimped some dope turntables. Shout out to at J Tech NYC. Yo, I always sing the praises of this man. This man, his work is incredible. So check him out. There goes a free plug right there for my boy there. All right. So yeah, man. Let me read this here. Yeah, man. DMC. I remember DJ Rock Raider, man. I remember watching him in BB King's, man, and he was using all vinyl, all vinyl. An old school GL1 mixer and two turntables, two old ass 12s too. You could tell they were old, gray. You know, it was well maintained, but you could tell they've been around the block. And Rock Raider, rest in peace, man. He blew me away, man. Blew me away. Pause. Yeah. My mind was out of here watching him perform on that BB King stage. Anyway, folks, enough reminiscing from one time, man. I dedicate this To all the old school DJs who used to bust their ass carrying their equipment with their crew up tenement flights of stairs with no elevators and shit, huh? Yeah. Okay, we can discuss further technological improvements like not carrying so much gear around. I'm down with that. I'm cool with that, I guess. But there will never be a time like the 80s, the 90s, the 70s, 80s, and 90s when it comes to that hip hop, that rap, that work, that funk, that music. We all love, we all know and love. Let me just say that. With that being said, folks, I dedicate this to all the DJs out there, man, that know what's up, that know what it is, that put in the real work, and probably transition over to the easy work. And I know y'all are very appreciative about that. At almost 30 now, hard to find people at my age that still go to school, that still go old school. We still have some guys in Seattle, though, but most are in the 50s. Like me, I'm 52. With all the things being said, y'all, I'm gonna just take a moment and lean over here and say peace. Right here, so I can stop recording there. And to you folks watching at home, to tell a friend about this right here. The United Ronin Networks is the channel you are now viewing. Please tell a friend about what I do here. Any little bit helps, y'all. Any little bit helps. Tell a friend, please. I'm on IG. I'm on TikTok. Thanks, brother. God bless. Keep it up. Never stop. You neither, Milagro. Thank you for being on some day one status, man. And with all of those things being said, y'all, I love you all like cooked food. Stay sexy. It becomes you. Peace. Bye, Yolanda Torres. Yolanda Thomas. I'm sorry, Torres. Yolanda Thomas. Thank you. And see y'all next time. See you in a couple of days. Peace.